All right, back again for another episode. This time, Tom is covering for Robin. We'll get to that in a second, but these are the stories that we're going to run through today. AI can now read your face and detect your emotions. Morphcast is a software that can see who's paying attention in your Zoom meeting and then give you a report at the end. Terrifying. Roblox is also coming to Meta Quest in VR, which is a pretty huge moment for the biggest game and virtual world on the planet. What does that mean for Meta's Horizon worlds? We'll get into that. Elon Musk also is launching a new AI startup to protect us from a Terminator Future. Quite hilarious, considering he's also building Tesla bots, the actual potential Terminators of the future as well. And major esports team 100 Thieves launched their first game build in Fortnite. We're seeing this whole trend of kind of gamers as creators, and all of that's happening. So lots to get into. First of all, though, as I say, Robin is away this week, so we have the excellent, wonderful writer genius and on-screen delight that is Tom. So welcome along, Tom.
Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here. This is actually my first ever podcast appearance, so it's an honor to do it with you, Luke. As they say, you always remember your first.
Well, exactly. Yeah, it's a magical moment for us all, I'm sure. But now, I would actually be able to tell if you were lying or not with our first story, which is Morphcast. And this is quite weird, right? So if you're watching on YouTube, I'll play you a clip of this. But basically, you can go and do this yourself on their website as a demo. And essentially, it uses your webcam and it plays you a video. So the video is like a kind of horror clip, right? But as you respond to it and as your face kind of moves, it's giving you a live readout of what emotion it thinks you are thinking. So my sort of resting state appeared to be embarrassed and ashamed, which I don't know what that says about me. But I also at one point burst into laughter just to test it. And it found that I was then amused and I was confident as well, just reading my facial expression. So yeah, weird for starters. They've got a few use cases for it. They are saying that you can use it for something called interactive videos. So if, for example, you're watching an advert and then you start not paying attention because it's not interesting to you, then it will automatically choose a different part of the video to come next to keep you engaged. So we can get into that. And there's also a program that uses the technology in a Zoom meeting, as we said, to track what everybody's thinking. So, we see all these AI tools. We see it all the time. We talk about them all the time. A lot of them are rubbish and just don't work. And then occasionally we have one that's like legit terrifying and you can actually use it straight away. Tom, how do you feel about AI just reading your face and knowing your emotions at all time?
Well, I would be intrigued to have Morphcast run this little clip of you just talking to me now, because I wonder if it would have picked up on the skepticism beneath the surface of my face. I tried to kind of contain my cynicism and skepticism. But it's interesting because the use cases as outlined on their website seem to be, it's framed as though it's trying to improve interactive experiences for the consumer, for the end user.
How nice of them.
How nice of them. But let's be honest, what this is really about is trying to squeeze as much attention, retention, and ultimately, therefore, probably money out of the consumer. So this idea of interactive video, correct me if I'm wrong, is that you're watching a commercial, let's say, and in real time, Morphcast is able to gauge how receptive and responsive you are to it, whether you're tuning out, whether you're disgusted, revolted, whether you're excited, and based on that data can pivot in real time and possibly skip to another part of the video or change direction completely in order to maintain your attention. So it's not about necessarily, from what I've seen on the website, making it a better experience for the end user. While I guess it might be because it's curated and it's bespoke and it's moving fluidly in order to try and keep you engaged. But who's it ultimately serving? Is it serving us, or is it serving whoever happens to be selling, shilling, whatever product it might be?
It tends to be the latter of the two cases, doesn't it? But we'll see. I'll tell you what they say on their website, right? So this is a quote from their website. Morphcast's interactive video platform leverages facial emotion recognition technology to discern viewers' emotions and dynamically navigate them through pathways you design within your video content, which sounds amazing. But as you quite rightly pointed out, what does that actually mean and how are they going to use it? The Zoom one is weird as well, partly because are Zoom work conversations an emotional experience?
They can be, Luke.
Can they?
Can
okay.
Be. Oh yes.
Barbara from Accounts is just absolutely flabbergasted by the recent AGM of data and analytics that we need to know her emotions at all time. Weird.
But what is the alleged use case for the Zoom application? Can you elaborate on that?
So I've seen, so they have got like a demo video on the site where it just gives you a breakdown. It's like tracking everybody's face and then can kind of give you like an analytics breakdown of what everybody thought afterwards, which I just can't see like why that is helpful. And also like, can't we just communicate? Like if something is rubbish, I guess it's, I don't know. It's weird, isn't it? But like, is that a thing we need? Does that solve a problem or does it create a problem? Almost certainly the latter one. I'll give you one other example, which they use on their website, which is kind of interesting. So again, this is like an advertising based one, but this has happened. So Coca-Cola teamed up with Marshmello, the artist, to release, you might have seen it, it's like a white Coca-Cola can. And they wanted to do like an interactive experience with it. So you scan a QR code and then you listen to the song starts playing, and there's like a 3D animation on the screen. And using this technology, which is looking at your face, as you change your expression, so maybe as the whatever crescendo builds in the song and you start to feel happier, the 3D animation changes in real time. And at the end, you get given this video of the animation, which is like an art piece that you've created with your emotions, is kind of like the line there. And I was like, okay, that was a lot. Again, do we need that? But like creating art based on your emotional reaction, something kind of interesting. I was like, okay, maybe.
Yeah. It's interesting. There is another use case which could be human-centric. And that might be, okay, it's easy to kind of scoff at this idea that, well, I don't need an AI tool to scan the faces of my colleagues in a Zoom call to understand who's paying attention, who's responding to what I'm saying, and who inside thinks I'm an idiot. But there might be instances, for example, let's say you're somebody who suffers a particular type of autism, who struggles to read and interpret other people's expressions. Maybe some kind of tool that would help you navigate social situations more smoothly might actually be a helpful thing. That aside, I am struggling to see how this benefits anyone other than the corporate interests vying for our ever-dwindling attention. And I guess this idea of interactive video is it not symptomatic of our time as well? Like the decreasing attention span that afflicts us all.
Yeah, it's you're not wrong. That is good, interesting use case you mentioned. But yeah, the attention thing as well. Like we look at TikTok videos, Instagram Reels, and all that stuff that are now so designed. And if you're a creator, you are constantly making sure something happens every 2 seconds, because that's when like we can maybe scroll to something else because there's so much choice. I was like, how could our attention get squeezed anymore? This seems to be like, well, it now knows if you're not paying attention. And in theory, videos where it's responding to you potentially in real time to keep your attention is the next level of that, isn't it? So pretty wild, but you can go and play with this. It's worth doing because it's quite funny to do with other people as well.
But what's interesting as well is that at this point, it sounds like this is just working on facial expressions. Now, as we know, facial expressions aren't necessarily the most accurate barometer of what a person is feeling.
True.
So it's interesting that when you manufactured a laugh, I don't know to what degree, I mean, laugh and smile, and you tend to have the physiological kind of chemical reaction as though you really had, right? So, I do that, I actually do feel better. But is this not reducing the complex spectrum of experience and emotion to something that is by definition surface level and superficial? Interesting. Yeah, it definitely is. So it would be quite fun to see, to battle test this and dupe it, because if everybody knows that they're under observation in a Zoom call, then
it's just gonna be loads of really smiley faces just cracking up at everything said. Yeah.
Speaking of which, you're looking into the camera, which means it seems like you're looking at me, Luke, whereas I'm actually looking at you on the monitor. But I'm just wondering, with a combination of, with these sorts of tools like Morphcast coming to the fore, have you experimented with NVIDIA's latest broadcast update, which has this eye gaze solution?
Yeah, I have seen it in action, and it's really interesting, isn't it? For anyone who doesn't know,
are you using it right now?
I'm not using it right now, but you would not be able to tell. That is the thing. It's another genuine cool one. So if your eye line is off on the camera, maybe if you're reading an auto cue or you're looking at a monitor, like when you're recording, this AI is able to reposition your eyes in a non-weird or creepy way, or even noticeable way that you are looking directly at the camera. It does really work. And it's really good. So you begin to go into, okay, well, how reliable is, especially in a digital form, Are we going to trick AI with AI? Probably. We're getting to that point. On the back of this as well, there is a different tool, but also noticed this week that's quite interesting. This is called Jabber AI, and this is basically, it uses boxing as an example, and it's tracking in real time all of the kind of movements and hits and everything else. So you can see, when somebody actually gets struck with a punch or whatever. Is quite cool. So it's a bit like VAR, I guess, and that's nothing new. But I don't think it's been the case for boxing. And I guess it's getting all that data and it's training itself and learning and getting better at it, which I don't think VAR is as well. So this is kind of interesting, isn't it? It opens up the whole debate about technology in sport, which just goes on forever, but kind of interesting.
Yeah, so VAR was brought into soccer, or football as we call it, a few years back, and basically it allows referees to review video footage to confirm whether or not something was a foul, whether the ball went out. It's really a kind of assistant for the officials. But Hawkeye's a great example. Hawkeye was integrated into tennis and it's been a great success. People tend to be on board with it. If you think back to the sort of famous John McEnroe tantrum in which he was furious with the referee, he was furious with the umpire for calling a ball out when there was chalk dust. Everyone could see that there was chalk dust. It's interesting. Technology is being embraced into sports, rightly so. I've often wondered, will there be a time where we can use AI, let's say in soccer, to actually tell whether somebody has dived, right? So whether somebody has fallen to the ground intentionally, and would we be able to, maybe using something a little like this, to determine whether they had generated the momentum to do so, or whether it was an authentic, real fall. And that might actually start to mitigate against the theatrics that drives us all mad. The thing with the boxing one as well, I've only seen the demo, but every time we introduce a technology to sport, it kind of opens up a whole set of new problems. So with VAR, there's been countless VAR kind of dramas and scandals, right? And the same goes with this. Now, boxing, for example, is well known to be blighted by corruption. There have been many instances of maybe whether it's match fixing or whether it's simply poor judging. Same with MMA. There have been many recent examples of fights being called in one direction when the vast majority of viewers actually felt it deserved to go in the other. The introduction of a neutral AI tool that we could use to actually compare and hold judges to account.
All right, on to the next story then, and this is that Roblox is coming to Meta Quest, which is a big deal, in my opinion. Roblox, I think by number of users, is the most popular game / virtual world's closest thing we have to a metaverse experience in the world. 66 million users join every day across multiple platforms as well, so mobile to console to PC, and now VR as well, starting with Meta Quest, but looks like it's rolling out to other kind of headsets and ecosystems soon. It's a big deal for a lot of reasons, I think. I mean, first of all, there are already 15 million active experiences on Roblox, and it sounds like they're going to be easily ported across to be able to experience that all in VR. So there's all this content and all these users that are already there. We're also seeing like a shift with Roblox where it's aging up a lot, because the general sort of feeling around Roblox, if you're a parent, you'll certainly know this, or if you're a teenager, it was traditionally for like young kids. Like the graphics are blocky and a little bit rubbish is most people's kind of assumption of it, but we're starting to see that change. So people are making some amazing games on Roblox using the Roblox sort of studio tool that you would never guess were a Roblox game. There's a first-person shooter that looks not dissimilar to kind of Call of Duty a few years ago. There is also, interestingly, the fastest growing age group on Roblox is now 17 to 24-year-olds. So 38% of daily users are over 17. So this platform is aging up. And they've also just released age-appropriate access. So you can, if you're over 17, you can do a thing to kind of prove your age. And then there's a load of experiences that you have access to that somebody younger doesn't. So yeah, this is becoming probably the closest thing we have to sort of a metaverse type experience that can be experienced on all these different platforms. I think it's a big milestone in the whole sort of journey of this world, really. What do you think about this, Tom?
Well, it's interesting because I think we've often thought of the Fortnites or the Minecraft or the Robloxes as proto metaverses, i.e., kind of early iterations of what might be the metaverse. But increasingly, these distinctions are becoming blurred. You know, Matthew Ball, the writer, thinker, and all-round sort of metaverse Chad, he gives a
description.
He gives a definition of the metaverse, a sort of working definition of the metaverse, which I cannot recite it from memory. But he always talks about it needs to meet the following criteria, one of which is a fully immersive 3D experience that is consistent and gives you a sense of presence. And it's just interesting because while that's a very good definition, I think certainly if we think about what our imaginings and culturally what we think of the metaverse as one day being along the kind of Ready Player One lines, are we going to get to a point where actually that's not going to be an adequate description of what the metaverse ends up being? It'll be multi-platform. You'll be able to play in Roblox, in VR, but then you can also jump on your PC and continue. And we'll be moving between 3D immersive and more traditional experiences. It's a huge deal. It's an interesting thing you mentioned about the demographic change taking place. Because when I heard the news, the first thing I thought was, well, it was a couple of things. RIP Horizon Worlds, maybe. We can get to that in a second.
Maybe that's Meta's. Yeah, we'll get to that in a second. Yeah.
But the other thing is, with all these, like with UEFN and with Roblox, for example, the demographic tends to be pretty young. And yes, we might be getting a mass sort of onboarding into the quote unquote metaverse through these platforms. But what is being done and how is that going to, are we going to end up with, let's say, dominant metaverse experiences that are pretty much overrun and overruled by a much younger generation, thereby making it kind of inaccessible to older generations? Because what's going to compel, I don't know, my grandmother to put on a headset? It's not going to be.
Well, here's what I think about this stuff. So you look at all kind of technology shifts, especially if it's like content and entertainment, and everybody kind of grows up with their habits that happen probably in their teenage years most like dominantly, right? So I look at my parents who still will put on the 10 o'clock news, right? Because they know it's on at 10 o'clock and it's on TV, even though all of us who are in the younger generation look at Twitter, we've already seen all the news and way more other stuff before 10 o'clock in the evening. And they're starting to, they do use YouTube now. My dad plays piano and he looks up YouTube stuff and he watches, he has kind of shifted to that more recently, but it took a long time. So I think it breaks down to age groups and habits. So I don't think the metaverse is whatever it is in all of our brains that's beginning to shape up is going to be relevant to older groups who have their habits ingrained, or maybe not relevant, like I hope it is, but it's going to be less. That's not where the action is going to be taking place. It is going to be taking place from the next generation down, right? Who grew up with playing games and socializing in video games and all that stuff. So I think it'll roll out in a similar way. Affects everyone, but to different degrees, right? It's probably what will happen, I'd guess.
Yeah, and also I guess older generations who aren't familiar with these existing gaming platforms or whatever, or who have no interest in gaming whatsoever, which is fine, they will probably find an entry point maybe through the Apple ecosystem or something like that. Maybe augmented reality it's a smaller leap, because if you're used to using apps, or even if it's just watching films on your television or streaming them, and then being able to put on a headset and experience that in a slightly more immersive and maybe even social way, that makes sense. That's an easy leap to make for most people.
It also makes you think about like the whole bigger picture of this. So you're right, like the Apple ecosystem is probably for a slightly different age group, I would say. They're not at the minute focusing on the real gaming crowd. They're focusing on like the productivity, which is probably kind of 30 plus, I would guess. We'll see what happens. It also makes you think about like how big the challenge is for, any sort of crypto-based or decentralized metaverse or new projects. And we saw all those promises to really, you're going up against Roblox and Fortnite and Apple to make something that is competitive is like a big ask, isn't it? Really, when they've got those user bases. Sure, something will happen, and maybe it's other sides. The Yuga Labs one will be one that also rises up, and there'll be room for lots. But yeah, you realize what the challenge is. And talking of that as well, even we mentioned Meta Horizon Worlds, which is Meta's virtual world type social version of Roblox, if you like. That's only in VR. And we know how much Meta has spent on all this stuff. And at the minute, like, the numbers of people turning up there are really, really low still. I think it is fun. I think it is good. You've been in there. What have you discovered in Horizon Worlds?
I have been to Horizon Worlds, Luke. I've explored the comedy scene there. Can't say much for it yet. I did get on stage, Luke. It did not go very well for me. It was the beginning and end of my career. But as a place for socialization, as a place for workplace collaboration, look, you're not going to be collaborating with your colleagues in Roblox, at least not yet. I don't think so. So there's definitely going to be a place for these new worlds, let's call them. But in terms of actually trying to become a dominant player in what is effectively virtual worlds, the Robloxes, the Minecrafts, the Fortnites, they have unbelievable first move advantage. And the moment these sorts of partnerships just make sense, do I think it's the death of Horizon Worlds? Well, I would argue that Horizon Worlds has never really truly been alive. So
fair.
Let's see how it plays out.
Next up on the list is this announcement that Elon Musk is launching an AI startup and warns of a Terminator future. So we keep hearing about this with the AI debate, and Elon there's plenty of clips of him being scared about this future and really thinking that the problem was that we let it all out to the public with things like ChatGPT before we really had any sort of control or understanding of it, and that maybe was a mistake. So this story is about him launching an artificial intelligence startup that will be pro-humanity. As he said, the world needed to worry about the prospect of a Terminator future in order to avoid the most apocalyptic AI scenarios. So we should be thinking about this stuff so it doesn't happen. It's called xAI, and it would seek to build a system that would be safe because it was maximally curious about humanity rather than having moral guidelines programmed into it. We'll go into that in a second because that's kind of interesting. From an AI safety standpoint, a maximally curious AI, one that's trying to think and trying to understand the universe, is, I think, going to be pro-humanity, he said on a Twitter Spaces. I like that he said, I think. It doesn't sound massively confident that this is definitely the solution here. If I could press pause on AI or really advanced AI digital super intelligence, I would. It doesn't seem like that is realistic, though. So xAI is essentially going to build an AI in a good way, sort of, hopefully. So... big topic, and he doesn't really seem confident enough, but then I guess who knows. Quickly, I thought this part was interesting. So he's been doing some Twitter Spaces, and he said on one of them that he's had doubts over the safety implications of programming a moral stance into these tools. Now, this gets a little bit deep, but it is interesting. If you program a certain reality into AI, you have to say what morality you are programming in. So if you're going to give it moral rules, his thing is, whose decision is that? Who should give it the moral rules, right? Which is a completely valid question. Nobody kind of owns that stuff, and morality varies across region and country and everything else. And he added that once an AI is programmed with a specific moral standpoint, it's easier to prompt it into reversing it. So this, amazingly, is called the Waluigi effect. For anyone who's not familiar, Waluigi is Luigi from Mario's evil brother, I think, or cousin or something, named after Luigi's mischievous arch rival in the Super Mario gaming franchise. I love that very advanced scientists use Mario references here. So yeah, this is early days. He's talking about it, what he wants to do, but it's quite a marker that he's doing it alongside everything else he's working on, right?
Well, it may be no bad thing. Only time will tell.
I hope so, yeah.
He has been sounding the alarm for, years now. It's interesting. I think it's quite a graspable concept, this Waluigi idea. I just had to look it up because I'd read somewhere that the term used before Waluigi, which obviously has its origins in pop culture, was from the Swiss psychoanalyst Carl Jung, the godfather of modern psychoanalysis. And the word is really hard to pronounce, but it's this. Where is it? Okay. The word is, wish me luck.
Good luck.
Enantiodromia.
Oh, so catchy.
Yeah. I bet that was on the tip of your tongue, right?
Effect.
You knew I was going to say that. You all knew I was going to say that. I'm sorry for speaking the obvious, everyone. Jung had this idea of like the shadow self, right? So it's basically everything has a kind of opposite and everything exists in opposition to something. There's health and then there's sickness. There's abundance and there's scarcity. There's light and dark. There's good and bad, right? This like kind of dialectical. Everything exists in opposition to something. So with the Waluigi effect, or whatever you want, or whatever they call it, the idea is that if you have a moral framework or some kind of moral compass or training for a large language model, then while it might abide by that compass, the framework is there for it to be inverted. Because if you can program something to be quote unquote kind to humans, then it's much easier for some kind of inversion to take place and it to just then do the opposite. It's effectively breaking the rules. You give it rules and parameters, those rules can be broken, and they maybe ultimately will be broken because, let's face it, rules are there to be broken. So it's interesting. This might be the right approach. Obviously, I don't understand enough about it to give my 2 cents as to whether it is, but I think we can grasp this idea that you can have a benevolent, benign, quote unquote, large language model that's been trained to do certain things. It doesn't take a huge leap of the imagination to see that it could go rogue and decide to just go off and do the opposite.
Yeah, he's talking about this maximally curious idea, which I guess is starting from nothing and hoping that by it experiencing and working out the world, it will realize that humans are important or leave them alone and go elsewhere if there's a bigger, mission to fulfill or whatever. Obviously, yeah, there's a lot here. These are big, massive ideas, but we'll see what he continues to do. Just for a definition of the Waluigi effect theory, the theory goes that it becomes easier for AI systems fed with seemingly benign training data to go rogue and blurt out the opposite of what users were looking for, creating a potentially malignant alter ego. So yeah, that is the idea. That's what he's trying to stop. So we'll see how it works out over the next few days. He's doing Twitter Spaces quite regularly. If you want to go in deep, I'm sure he'll say some interesting stuff. Next on the list then is this release by 100 Thieves, who are a big esports team. We'll talk about this. They debuted their bank heist custom Fortnite map. Now, if you don't play Fortnite, if you're not into that world, I'll explain. So we also did a video all about esports recently, because I think it's one of those things that everybody realizes that esports is a massive deal, right? You're either massively in that world, you really understand what's going on. You can see that like the dominant pop culture is gaming now. But if you're a little bit older, you haven't grown up in that world, or you don't know about it, you're aware it's big, but you don't really know why or what's going on, perhaps. So that video hopefully will be helpful. It's like a 101 beginner's guide around esports. Now, there are professional esports teams that are worth an absurd amount of money. So 100 Thieves are one of those teams. They are the second most valuable by kind of revenue made, or their valuation, worth an estimated $460. And they are $460 million, excuse me. And they are both a pro team. So they have a roster of pro players who compete at an elite level with all these competitions all over the world. There's one happening in Saudi Arabia at the minute where the prize pool is $45 million or something crazy. They also have a roster of content creators, so massive YouTubers on there as well. So they're a whole kind of media beast. They sell merchandise. They're kind of a esports and lifestyle media organization, really. But they've released a build which they've done on Fortnite, and it's a bank heist game. So we have a based creator who has played the game and has recorded some amazing footage for us. So this is Sentenza Gaming. If you're watching on YouTube, we'll hit a little clip so you can see the excellent work that they've done. So they are playing the game. Shout out Sentenza Gaming. And yeah, it's like a bank heist thing. So you start on one of two teams, and you either have to infiltrate the bank while the other have to defend it, or you are trying to thwart their efforts, a kind of a competitive multiplayer extraction game. Now, whatever, this is interesting, not surprising, I guess, but the main thing that we keep coming back to is like we had the YouTube wave of content creation, where previously, if you wanted to make content that was seen on like TV or film, you had to go through the gatekeepers. And then we had the YouTube wave where technology made cameras cheaper. And then we had the kind of bedroom producers, and YouTube happened, and those people who embraced it, rocketed to fame and this new, stardom really as the whole influencer movement. The next thing we're seeing is really this creator-driven game development. That's kind of the next wave of all of this. So games traditionally, cost loads of money to make. This is the COO of 100 Thieves, who said the days of needing hundreds of developers and spending $100 million on development of a new game are over. We now have UEFN within Fortnite, which is a tool we talk about a lot and makes game development and creation easier. We're seeing that in Roblox. That's why these platforms have exploded. So yeah, it's interesting. They've put this out. And we are doing some of this stuff at Based as well, which hasn't been fully dropped yet, but we are certainly thinking about it. So yeah, thoughts here, Tom. It looks pretty good. Looks pretty fun.
I guess what we're seeing is the democratization of what has previously been an extremely expensive, costly, and inaccessible thing to most. This is just presumably the first of many. I mean, we've already seen Up Only recently. We might be dabbling in this ourselves, but I'm pretty sure brands across the world are currently scrambling to get their games out because it's such a huge opportunity. Are there any other examples? Nike.
Yeah, recently did the big dot swoosh experience that we've seen. Yeah, we're starting to see these really hit as well. And there's also the breakdown of what creators are making. So there's this rush at the minute to create games that are keeping people's attention. And Fortnite, make billions of dollars a year from revenue of people buying virtual items in the game. They are giving 40% of that to creators. So 40% of all their revenue goes into a big creator pool. And then those people who are building their own games and are getting the most kind of attention and retention and, helping people in the ecosystem are getting a share of that pool. So there's 5 creators who are on track to make $10 million plus this year from creating games inside Fortnite. So this is big business, is a big next trend. And yeah, it is making a lot of money for people. The people who did Only Up, I imagine, were smashing that, right? Because, we saw kind of the first, not the first game to go viral, but the first kind of like user created game to have, there was, I think, 300,000 people playing it at the same time. It's the same thing of kind of viral videos, right? The very early days of now, the creators are making viral games that you kind of can jump into pretty quickly. You're already on Fortnite. You just have the island map code, and there you are playing this game that everybody's talking about. That was created not by a massive game studio, but by someone on a whim, responding to kind of internet culture. So yeah, this is the start of a big trend coming.
Yeah, totally. And I just mentioned that how brands are scrambling to try and get their games out, and I'm sure they are. But actually, what's cool about this is that whether you're a brand or whether you're just like a creator, whether you're a streamer or whatever, you may not have the resources that a major brand does, but at the end of the day, you're kind of given the same set of tools. So again, it's just a real democratization of the whole thing, which can only be a good thing moving forward.
Yeah, 100%. It's and as we say, we're building in Based. Make sure you hit subscribe because you'll see what's coming, and we are doing some stuff along this lines for sure. So yeah, there we go. Another dose of Metaverse stories, and it does feel like the tide is turning a little bit. We're seeing even the crypto markets come back. We don't want to go too deep into SEC and boring Ripple stuff, but we've seen some of the nonsense come back. So that all kind of fuels the next wave, a bit of hype for good or for bad, but the attention is spinning back in favor of all this stuff. And it's interesting when even when the market's been down, all this stuff has been building, and it's often during those times that the cool stuff really gets done, and then the hype comes back, and then suddenly it's all there. So feeling good, feeling positive about the next few weeks.
It's all coming together. It's all starting to kind of coalesce, and whatever we think the metaverse is going to be, it's whatever we thought the metaverse was going to be. It's sort of now just unfolding.
Absolutely. Well said. Yeah, that's certainly the future we're heading towards. I think that was the pod. Nice times. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Of course.
Supermassive should be back in his seat. I'm sitting here. My feet don't even touch the ground. If I want my feet to touch the ground, I'm sorry for anyone that's listening here, but if I want my feet to touch the ground, you're only going to see the top of my forehead. So, yeah, big shoes to fill, and literally and figuratively. But thanks for having me.